What's up, guys? This is Patrick Foley, aka Patrick 4D. I'm a 3D artist / generalist working primarily in the ad field, and right now we're on video part 2 of kind of creating this abstract render from scratch using Cinema 4D and Octane. Of course, using two 2080 Ti's as we speak, and yeah, we're just about to finalize this shape here and kind of get going. And yeah, we haven't gotten to the lighting and texturing yet, but we're gonna finish this shape, add a few more elements, and then get right to it. So here we go. And now this looks pretty good. Now we just need these spheres to be bouncing off of this thing. Now usually I might use dynamics to kind of take these spheres and kind of actually hit this object to where they actually stamp on, but I only use dynamics, or I like to use dynamics if there's a need to, or there's like so many different spheres where I wouldn't want to do it by hand. But in this instance, there's only like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so we can do that pretty easily by hand. So what I want to do here is actually take a sphere, start by 1, and drag this to the corner. Apologies. And once we're done with that, we're just decrease this value a little bit to something like this, something like the main sphere. And I guess kind of making sure with this angle that we're going to have, it really doesn't matter if we're intersecting or not, because we're going to stick to this angle. But we can hop outside of the camera and see what's going on here. So looks like it is intersecting a little bit. Take that down. Of course, we are a little bit rigidy, so let's go to like maybe 36 segments. That's fine. These aren't going to be too detailed anyway. Something like that looks totally fine. So we can hop back into the camera. And what you'll want to do is actually make this editable, and you'll see why in a second. So just making that editable. So of course we can choose the segments, but that's not why. What we're going to do is just duplicate this by going back into the model mode and holding down Control and dragging. Let's drag one over here. T to scale and drag. And then you can kind of see where it's intersecting with things here. That looks fine. Something like that. Again, holding down Control. Boom, something like right there. And again, just eyeing this, kind of use your best judgment. Maybe make one come out a little bit in Z space. This one, maybe it'll be more important to not intersect if we don't have to. Perfect. And then maybe one more, just like we had it here. So let's go here. Boom, maybe a smaller one. And these are going to be clear, so let's see, a little bit smaller. Cool, so eyeing a lot of this stuff, guys. This is all just coming to me as I go. And making sure that's not totally intersecting. Of course, I'm not really zooming in. You can always be more careful and zoom in as needed. Boom. Perfect. Looking good. Now let's see what happens here. So we honestly have the majority of this thing modeled, if not all of it. The only thing we have to do is notice here that there are bubbles within bubbles, and that is why I said to make these editable. Usually I don't like doing things too destructively, but in this case they're just spheres, so there wasn't really much to lose. But if you'll see here, let's go create, what we're gonna do is create a folder. So let's do Alt-G to create a null with all of these spheres in it. So let's go spheres outer. So these will be the outer spheres, and then we'll duplicate this by holding down Control and dragging spheres inner. And this is fine. So what we can do here is, I think to be safe, let's make all of these things in X-ray mode. I guess we'll have to do this like this. Let me make sure that works. Yep, so these are in X-ray mode, and the only reason why they don't look like it is because the inner spheres currently aren't. But because these things are editable, I think we can highlight all of these things, and instead of scaling them like this, what we're going to want to do is go to Object Axis and Per Object Manipulation. So now, if we scale, see what's happening. So that is exactly what we want here. and I think something like that will work. So now we have spheres within spheres, not that much work, and we're looking good. We can finally, I think, light this thing, so let's do that. So here we are ready to light. First thing we have to do is consider the fact that we're using Octane. Currently I'm using two RTX 2080 Ti's in motion, and that's going to help a lot with rendering speeds, of course, with the CUDA cores. And specifically with the newest version of Octane, you can really enable RTX capabilities, so that's really helpful. So the first thing we're going to want to do is create an Octane dialog. I'm sorry, not dialog. Let's go Octane Live Viewer. We're going to drag that from this corner to the right. So now we have a render viewer and our geometry here. So by default, if we click render, we're going to see what happens here. Looking kind of cool, but basically everything is pretty default here. So the first thing we're going to do, let's move the camera all the way to the top so we don't get confused here. Let's right click the camera, go to C40 Octane tags, and enable an Octane camera tag. And that's going to allow us to do everything from create some post-processing noise, or not noise, post-processing bloom or lens flares, changing the LUTs, depth of field, all this stuff. So we'll get to that in a bit. But it's good to have this tag here in the meantime. The next thing we can do actually is let's go to, let's see, objects, HDR environment. And what that's going to do is create this whole black kind of dome around the thing, so no light is being given off, and that's completely fine because we're going to start lighting this thing with, of course, some lights. So let's create light. Let's go Octane Area Light. And already you can see that this is emitted some light here. So what I like to do is kind of rotate the first light to be the key light 90 degrees and hop into the front view. And now what I can do is kind of manipulate this light, drag this around, and see what's going on here. So this doesn't look too flattering because for one, we're not in path tracing. As soon as the light hits it, it dies. So that's why this part is completely black. So what we're going to do is go into Octane settings. Then we're going to go from direct lighting to path tracing. And now you can see so much more light is bouncing off of just this shape here and all the other shapes. Let's take the max samples down to 200 so we don't fry our computer too fast. And we're going to take this GI clamp down to 1. So that looks perfect. And I believe we can chill for that, chill right now, so we can exit that out. Next thing I want to do is I always like having this lock button, the lock resolution checked, and then just zooming out a little bit so I can see a bounding box and I can just see the composition a bit more clearly. But everything looks good here so far. I think we're looking good. Let's see. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way everything's looking. There we go. Sometimes the geometry gets stuck in Octane, so you kind of just have to manipulate the values a little bit just so it gets smooth again. But we're going to go back into our perspective view, and before I do anything, this is a very quick reminder to make sure you right-click the camera, go to Cinema 4D tags, and enable a protection tag. So doing that means you cannot, move around in the camera anymore and just erase your position that you just worked so hard to get. So that's good. That's totally fine. The next thing you'll want to do is take the Octane camera tag. Let's go camera imager and enable that. And notice you have a lot of highlights here. You're losing all this resolution, or not resolution, all this information here because you got such blown out highlights. And that's not usually what you want. You want the most latitude you can use so you can manipulate the colors later. So what you're going to do is take the highlight compression all the way to the top, and you can see it. It's a very subtle difference, but it definitely gives you more to work with. And now the rest being just a combination of that light is just too bright. So let's slim that down a little bit. Take the light tag and just decrease it a little bit. And this looks much more flattering. Just looks like a still life at this point. And let's create another light. So we can just duplicate this light if you want. So let's just click and drag, holding control. And now I can erase these coordinates for the second light. And let's go, oops. Let's rotate this 190 degrees so it's facing down. This can be like an overhead light. So already getting some nice light here. And if we hop back into the top view, now we can see the shape of this light. Sometimes I like going a little bit larger with the overhead and maybe creating a little bit of, you know, if the light's behind here, you're going to get more shadows in these areas versus if it's like way over here, you're just kind of losing a lot of information. So I like to get some kind of contrast going. Maybe meet in the middle, something like that. We get some kind of shadows there. I think that looks pretty cool. And the last one, we can get a fill light, or sometimes I like to choose, make this one a rim light. So what we can do is just take our original light. Let's call this key light being the most pronounced, brightest light. This one being our overhead. And then honestly, just let's duplicate the key light and call that rim. So rim light, sometimes called a hair light. Let's go to our right panel. So this is clearly the rim here, and let's slim this down a bit. Usually we'll want this to be a little bit smaller but brighter to give a nice rim light. So you'll see where this light currently is. And the reason we're not getting light here is because we duplicated that and it's facing the wrong way. So because we don't have to worry about anything on this side, we can really just click the, oops, I think I created two rim lights, so we can delete that rim light. And this rim is, once we go over here to this tag, we can just click double-sided, and that is now giving some light off there. So we're gonna move that to the back, and we really don't have to worry too much if this is popping into frame, because we can just take the opacity and take that down to 0. But we can also boost that light up a little bit more. So notice we're getting some nice rim lights here, which look pretty cool. And all this is going to come to fruition a little bit later once we start texturing this thing. So I think that's a pretty good place to leave off, guys. We've pretty much lit the whole thing, at least for what we need now. We've modeled this whole thing, and we just need to really texture this thing in Octane. So that'll be fun. That'll be in the next video series. So keep a lookout and keep an eye out for all these new videos coming out from that I will be releasing through this account. And feel free to subscribe. So I'll see you in the next video. Take care.